Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Today, I'm back with Josh Allan Dykstra. Josh was on one other time. If you haven't heard his last podcast, you need to jump in on it. He is a future of work keynote speaker and the world's foremost practitioner on human energy. He has spent the last 2 decades building 5 companies and working with some of the most iconic brands on earth, his clients having a combined employee count of over 1 million people. Josh is also an author, TEDx speaker, and a founder and CEO of the Work Revolution, where they fight for the future by fixing work. Welcome, Josh. It's great to have you on, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck. So good to be back.
Yeah, last time we talked about human energy, just what is it, and energizing people instead of sucking the life out of them. Today, I want to talk about what it means to work with a revolutionized operating system, a different way of building the foundation of work. So let's talk about that idea of an operating system. What do you mean when you say operating system? Because, we hear DOS and iOS, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I realized a few years ago when I was doing a lot of work, so I think people in our space, we talk about this thing called culture a lot. And culture just for me always felt important, right? I feel like I was talking about, you and I, Chuck, were talking about this culture thing many years ago, before it kind of became a word that other people were using to describe what's going on. And what I realized, though, as I started looking into more culture related things, is that it's really complex, right?
Yeah.
Like culture as a concept is kind of by definition really complex.
Yeah.
And so I started to look for a better way to think about and talk about this thing we call company culture. And eventually what I realized was that this operating system metaphor was really, really good. It's not perfect, but it's really, really close. Because what we think about when we think about an operating system, to your point, it's like Windows or DOS, or it's like iOS on your phone or Android on your phone, right? So most people don't think about their operating system, right? So it kind of lives invisibly in the background. But the operating system is making a lot of decisions for you. It's deciding what you can install, what programs you can run, what you can do on those programs, right? The operating system, it's a decision-making matrix, really, but it lives in this kind of invisible space, and we don't think about it hardly ever. Culture is a lot like that, where it's like you've got your company culture, but it kind of lives in the background, and it's made of decisions that founders and leaders have made long ago, probably, and now it lives in this kind of invisible space, and yet we're still kind of beholden to those values. Right. It's like I don't know exactly why we do this the way we do, right? If you find this in a lot of companies, it's like, why do we do this that way? Why do we
But
talk
we
to
know
customers?
that we do. We know,
do.
Oh, if I ask the boss this, he's going to say this, and I'm going to say, we know the outcome because there's this operating system in the background that we know where it's going.
Absolutely. And I know I can't say that to a customer, right? Like, I don't know exactly why, but I know I can't do that, right? So that kind of stuff happens all the time. And this is why, right? Like it kind of helps us understand what's going on here. There's an operating system running in the background, and it's made of core beliefs and values of the founders, and they've kind of imbued the company with their beliefs and values. And so now we're running this program, in the middle of this operating system, and we don't often know why or where it came from.
Well, see, I think that's where the analogy actually works really well. It doesn't break down, but it does go sideways in that a real computer operating system, people spend a lot of time and energy and a lot of thought on that before and during. It's always constantly, somebody's really aware of it and working on it. And I find that in most companies, the operating system is an accident.
Yes.
It's just something that happened to us as a result of having acted and done things over a period of time. And it's something that we kind of we don't know what it means. We can't verbalize it. And it's something that's running in the background that we're not doing this on purpose. So what if we actually did it like an operating system and looked at our own operating system and said, okay, what parts of this operating system aren't working. Let's do this on purpose.
Totally. And I think that that's another reason why I love this metaphor, because I think it hopefully helps leaders start to shift into that space where they can start to see, oh, yeah, I can actually change things about, like, if I want to, I could reprogram this operating system. And sometimes that's really messy, right? Like sometimes that's really complex and really hard to do, but you can do it, right? It's not impossible to change an operating system, but you have to be aware of what you're doing and that it is a system level thing that you're working on, right? This is not programs that are running. This is the system.
But I don't have time for this nonsense. I'm too busy making chairs.
Yeah,
Right?
I know.
I mean,
That's
where we go with this, is that we said this in your last podcast, that there's things that aren't visible at work in life. And so we're programmed to find a mastodon. It's very visible. We're not programmed to look for hope or operating systems or energy or any of that stuff. But what we don't realize is all of it starts there. We can't get to the mastodon if we don't have hope and energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is really becoming more and more the role of leaders, right? So if you aspire to be a leader, like, it is system level things for you to work on, right? It's not to get distracted with the tyranny of the urgent mastodon, but it's right to look at and work on the systems that allow people to catch more mastodons, right? Or whatever you're trying to, right? Like, you can make things, if you, and everybody knows this because we've all worked on a bad operating system, right? Like, we remember some of the old versions of Windows, right, that were just garbage to work on. Right. Like, that is not a life-giving, energy producing experience, right? This does not make me more productive to work on an operating system that is clunky and crappy. So if you can do the work to make those systems flow, you're doing your business a big favor. And I know it feels like you're working in a different spot though, right? Because you're not working on the tangible, you're kind of working in the intangible.
So let's say we've done the work and we've reoriented our operating system around things that are really valuable. How could you see the shift in that? What does that look like at a macro scale? And then how does that help me get off the treadmill as Bob, the stakeholder, or Fred, the leader? So what does it look like at a macro level to reorient our operating system from where we've been, this factory system nonsense for 200 years? What does it look like to get to something else?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the most helpful things we did in my last tech company was to create something we call the culture book. And the culture book aspired to make tangible the intangible things. So we would write down, here's our fundamental guiding principles, right? Here are the things that we believe. Here are the things these are the collective agreements that govern, right? So this is governance stuff, right? This is how we're going to work together.
I would call that sometimes your declaration of interdependence.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like a constitution-like thing where once we have this kind of collective agreement in place, everything, like, this helps me get off the treadmill because I don't have to worry so much about, people kind of breaking our unspoken agreements because nothing's unspoken anymore.
Well, and to relate it right back to the operating system analogy, my operating system right now is running in the background and I don't have to think about it, but boy, is it helping me. And that's because somebody did it on purpose. Somebody really worked hard in the operating system. So I'm freer to be more off the treadmill when you have a culture that is built on a fundamentally sound set of agreements.
I think that's exactly right. And then that allows you to work faster, right? It allows you to work better together, right? It allows you to work on higher order problems rather than just getting sucked into the mire of the urgent, right? So you can actually kind of get more above the fray when you're not worried about all of these kind of small tensions and small problems. And, this program is crashing over here and that thing isn't working, right? Like, a good operating system makes everything work better, to your point.
So who does the work? Is it, Bob, the CEO, or Sally, the CEO, who comes up with this entire thing, writes it down, and Thomas Jefferson's the thing and says, here it is, let's do it? How do we create a new operating system? Yeah.
So I do find this is a little bit of it's a back and forth kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So what you do need kind of a visionary person, right? Or a leader, right? To say, hey, hey, here's the thing, right? Like, here's an idea. We're going to put this on the wall and we're going to talk about it, because it's really
I had
hard
this
for people.
vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's almost impossible for a lot of people to do that envisioning thing of the things that don't exist.
Yes.
And so, right, you need somebody in that, right? And that's a great place for leaders, right? To step up and say, hey, what if we did it this way? And so I think putting something out there is much better than trying to blank slate this thing with your 100 people. Put something out there.
Yeah.
And then you just stay really open-minded to evolve it over time with input. And like, so everyone who wants to participate gets to participate. Right. But yeah, I think you need to start with something and then iterate.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. But I also like the idea that it is not something we impose. It's not a top-down imposed hierarchical thing.
Right.
It's something that it's organic hierarchy. It's like, hey, this is something I feel like will work. Well, we know that it will work because everyone wants to do it. It's the old adage that, how do you know if you're a leader? Well, you look behind you and there's people following. It's voluntary. And so you put this vision out there and these people say, hey, I like this. And could we do this piece a little bit better, a little bit differently? And it goes to the old adage that we've used so often, you've heard me say it, input equals ownership. If you want people to own the operating system and really buy off in the culture of the company, then you have to involve them in developing it and continue involving them and saying, hey, how are we doing?
Yeah. 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 One of my mentors says people only support what they help create. Right? They really can only, right? They can only truly get behind what they help create. And so I think that's exactly right. It is a process, I think, and seeing it as something that lives and breathes. So we did probably 50 plus versions of our culture book in the 5 years that Love Work was around.
Well, I love that you're transparency in that, because I'm coming to this thought. I have these blinding flashes of the obvious, and a couple times a year. And one of my newer ones is that life is an experiment. That's an obvious thing, but business is an experiment. Everything we're doing is an experiment, and you just experimented 50 times. And we're not used to that. We think that when we put out our Declaration of Interdependence, that it should be done forever, and it should work for 300 years all by itself. And we're iterating because life changes, life evolves, we evolve, new people come, some people go, the business evolves, everything, we're learning. And so it's an experiment. So we don't have to sweat thinking that we got to get this perfect the first time. No, we've got to get it. Just get something out there, and you'll build on that, and it'll become great because you moved.
Totally. Yeah. Much more important to start by starting. Right? Get something going. Exactly. To your point, as I've heard you say over the years, right, get your boat moving. Right? Like this is how we create things. But it is really powerful once you kind of put some of these guardrails around the way that we're working, our collective way of working together.
So you mentioned a good place to start would be for the leader to say, here's what it should look like going forward. I have a picture in my head of what it might look like, what we might look like, what our business might look like 5 years from now. How could they get some new ideas? Because most of the ideas we have in all the books and all the stuff, it's just old industrial age factory system nonsense regurgitated and lipstick on the pig 100 times. Where would do you have something that you could share with them? And, maybe a talk or book or other things that are yours and maybe aren't. Where can I start to say, I know that what I'm doing doesn't feel good. I just don't know what else to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you got a lot of excitement there.
Yeah. I notice on Zoom, when you do this, it's going to do it again, I think. They have all these things that I don't want to, these are things that are imposed on me in top-down hierarchy that I didn't ask for. Right. Symbols.
Yes. The operating system is not being kind to you. I'd be delighted to share our culture book if it helps me. That's probably the place I would point people to, and then you can borrow pieces of it or what. So it would be a great place to start, because it really we put so much love and time into it over the years, and it's got a lot of great principles. I think you're probably mentioned in there, Chuck, at least once, with some of the things you've inspired us to do. So that might be a good place for people to start if they say, hey, yeah, where do I start, right? How do I start creating a document like this?
How can they get hold of you to get your culture book?
Yeah, if you want to just ping me at there's a form at the bottom of joshallan.com. That'd be the best place. You can just send me a message, and I'd be delighted to share. I might end up publishing this thing at some point, but yeah, for right now, if you want to just ping me a note, and I'll send it to you.
Great. And this is a video cast, but it's also a podcast. So for those who aren't watching, it's Josh Allan, ALLAN, 2 A's, joshallan.com. So at the bottom of that, ping Josh and he'll send you the culture book. Yeah, and that would be that's a wonderful place to start, because you get to see a company that has actually done this. Here's what we did. Here's real life bullets. This isn't theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's so many places that you will probably lead them from there to other books and other speakers and other people who have done this. This is not your thing. This is actually a movement that is sweeping across business. And I've said it before, people who do this are going to thrive, and those who don't will get left behind. So I think this is a great place to start, is just get your culture book and say to myself, hey, what part of this feels right to me? I want to re-engineer our culture and our operating system. And I don't know how to get there. I think that's the important piece of this, Josh. I've learned over the years, and you've probably learned this as well, it's not how that's the most important question. It's where and why. And, and it's the end questions. Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind. If I know what I want when I'm done, I can get there. And the best book I can think of that I recommend it all the time is called Maverick by a guy named Ricardo Semler. And he took over his dad's company in his early 20s and completely re-engineered around these ideas in the 80s. Again, this is not new stuff. But what you see in this book is a guy who had no idea actually how. He only knew what and where. He knew where he wanted to end up and what it looked like when he was done. And he got there in the book by knowing very clearly what it looked like. So your culture book is going to be real important to people for that. Give me an idea what it looks like when it's done, and then I'll come up with my own. And then we can get there. I have to know where Boston is, or I can't start the journey. Totally. So, you got to know what the end is, and that's a great way to start it. What's one more thing you could put out there for our listeners to help them get started on this idea of culture or a new operating system before they even get your culture book?
Yeah. The other resource I could point you to is maybe my TED Talk, because I did talk a bit about this. And that's going to kind of connect even the last podcast we did with this one, because it brings in the energy-based operating system into this idea of governance. And so what I talk about in the TED Talk is it's all energy themed stuff, right? What you need is you need a magnet, right? You need a big why in Chuck language, right? You need the why that you're going after, and it's got to be magnetic enough that people want to run towards it, like we talked about in the last episode. Then you need river banks, right? So if you think about the energy contained inside a flowing river, but the river banks keep us all flowing in the same direction. That's what we've been talking about this episode, right? So it's the things that keep us all moving together.
And it gives us a sense of security.
Yes, totally. And then the third piece is understanding your personal batteries. We talked a little bit about that last episode too. It's like understanding what energizes you, what recharges you, and what sucks the energy out of you. So, but yeah, the TED Talk goes through those three things a little bit. So I think if you watch the TED Talk and combine it with the culture book, you have a great start to moving in this direction.
Well, Josh, I know your focus is on public speaking and speaking for companies and helping them get kickstarted on this kind of stuff and getting them moving. JoshAllan.com if you want Josh to speak to your group, your organization, your conference. I know him well, and I highly recommend Josh. You can't get a better guy on your docket than Josh. So Josh, love you to death and love what you're doing. And love your commitment to rehumanizing the workplace and giving everybody their brain back, as we like to say. And I especially love your focus on individual human energy. That's powerful. So thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you so much. So much. You've been such an influence on me for so many years. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate you.
Well, let's just keep going. This is too much fun to stop.
Indeed. To be continued.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
that wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow, G-R-O-W, at cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.